The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
This is News Talk.
Welcome along to Wednesday night's Off the Ball. It is Will with you again. We've got a pack show coming up. John Mon, who was in charge of Clare when they beat Kerry in the 1992 Munster final, will be joining us alongside Neil Ewing to preview this weekend's provincial deciders after 8 o'clock. 7:30, we're going to have Wednesday night rugby. Fiona Hayes and Rory O'Connor. And Dan McDonnell is here with me all night. How are you getting on, Dan?
It's a pleasure, Will. I'm good.
Richie McCormack is with us as well. How many points clear are Bows at the top of the table, Rich?
Just the four.
Just the four.
Well,
still the four.
I'm glad Dan has taken time out from taking food from horsey types' mouths over the last week or so.
That's obviously been my motivation, Richard.
Listen, clearly, Dan. Clearly, I mean, you are somebody who walks around with a sandwich board around Dublin City Centre saying, "I hate racing," and I think it's about time you got called out on it.
I mean, I'm actually, when I think about it, I'm probably a substantial contributor to this fund.
Right, yeah. Of all people for this to be like,
I'm just thinking about this now. Like, I don't need to sit down and actually start and process how much money I've spent on horses and bad bets. And my God, why did you bring that up, Richie? This is a really bad way to start the show.
It's a really
bad way to start the show. But there you go. Yeah, no, that's it. You know, I mean, get me my pink shirt and take me to Aintree, because that's obviously that's something I feel strongly about, or actually not at all. And it may just be a valid talking point that isn't an attack on racing. It's just the exploration of how public funds are spent, which people seem to be afraid of talking about, or maybe apologising for doing so.
So just to clarify, you're not tying yourself to Beecher's Brook by the end of tonight?
Unlikely to do so. I mean, I've thought about that previously for different reasons, you know, but just to stop the race, you know. But otherwise, no, that's not on the agenda.
Given, Dan, we'll talk about this a bit later on, around the stories that you've been running over the last week or so, and even the bit of back and forth that there was today, have you been a little bit surprised about the backlash here? Because, I mean, you're a guy who's a racing fan.
Yeah, you know, you can't shouldn't really personalise it, but I mean, I am a racing fan, and like I consume a lot of racing media, you know, and I understand, I think, you know, a lot of elements of racing, the costs of racing, how it works, how it operates, you know, even the perception of their governing bodies, and certain decisions and issues they've made. And I am conscious that it's probably an easy rebuttal to this to say, well, look at the FAI, I mean, they're a joke. And I mean, you know, the FAI are still battling with that reputational damage and will do for some time. And it's an easy win, I suppose, to make that point. And you even see today, generally, like, you know, probably some other colleagues of mine wouldn't necessarily agree with the publication of this report or the FAI going this way, but to me, some of the language around that is very much in keeping with the sort of forelock tugging approach that sometimes I think has characterised football's relationship with government over a period of time. It hasn't really worked. I appreciate there's a complicated issue naturally, and it's a very easy rebuttal. I mean, the FAI has had a bailout in recent years. It's had help. But you're probably talking about a consistent stream of funding for the participants within it. And I'm not entirely comfortable with language that seems to suggest that because you have received that help, that there's almost a punishment there, which ultimately affects a lot of the people who participate and play in the games, you know, and play the game. And it shouldn't like take away from the ability to raise questions about this subject, because, look, I don't believe personally this is going to in any way lead to you know, dramatic cuts in funding to horse and greyhound racing. I think you can tell from the lobby that they have, that is particularly strong, that they will be fine. I mean, you have this very unusual situation, it would appear, where like the Minister of Agriculture is completely in control of the amount that can be allocated to those sports, which obviously in the way the Irish political system works is a very useful tool. And I think, you know, the assumption that, like, you know, the Department of Agriculture or the respective even opposition spokespeople on agriculture are suddenly go down the road of questioning this when this comes up for consideration, it's not particularly realistic. But I think some of the element of the debate around this for me has been an element of play the man rather than the ball in defence at times, and look, I understand people would say that that's where the FAI started from, but there has been a lot of stuff about, you know, this report has been carried out on a false premise. Like, the report in question is analysing the history of a fund that has, without any dispute, pumped 1.5 million of public money into two sports or industries in the space of 20 years. There was obviously a dispute around how has that been allocated, the terms and conditions of how that, and I know people maybe listening to this may not have followed this story, so I'm conscious of bringing them into the weeds and not getting them back. But the concept of reviewing that spend of public money in the context, I suppose, of sports funding in Ireland being a difficult climate, I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with that, and I appreciate people have an issue with maybe the public nature of it, but again, I'm not comfortable with some of the tone around that. Like you see today, well, it would appear that several ministers are prominent ministers are unhappy with this, and then sort of placed in the context of, you have to get Daily Mount done. It's almost like, so you're going to be in the Bowl Boys corner now. Like you're going to be punished for this, and that is like this whole approach of being reasonably quiet and not saying a huge amount over a period of time, I don't think has served Irish football at times particularly well. It doesn't realise or probably occasionally advertise well enough what it serves, and that extends to other sports too. Like Charlie McConnell, the Minister for Agriculture last week, was making the point, and this was probably viewed as a positive. I think I sort of felt like it was one of these things that probably should have read it before saying it. That the contribution to horse racing this year or last year is 72 million euro. This contrasts with the government's investment of sport, which I think was 156 or 166. That's all sports. And that 72 million is 80% of a figure, with the other 20% going to greyhound racing, which in a weird way, this becomes a little bit about horse racing because they are very front facing and there's glamorous figures involved with it, and including, in our paper and stuff, naturally you've pictures of horse racing accompanying it and the big owners. But I mean, the spend on greyhound racing, some of the more robust defences from the horse racing world, they don't play that card too much. And that one is probably even more unpalatable, and people are entitled to ask questions about where their money is spent. I don't think you should apologise for doing that personally.
No, and look, I think the argument when it comes to football as well, just because football got a bailout before doesn't mean they shouldn't be able to tap into the pie, particularly, as has been pointed out, with the amount of money that comes through gambling in this country through the levy on football. I'm not necessarily saying that means you should get directly correlated 40%.
No, you can debate that point. Yeah, you can completely debate that point.
You can make the argument for it, though.
Yeah, you can't shut down that debate. And I think what's probably striking about attempts to shut down debate with some questionable defences suggesting, and again, I'm conscious of getting bogged down into the weeds for people who haven't been reading this, but I think people will see statements from various government ministers and figures talking about how since 2009 there's been no relationship between betting tax income and the funding of horse and greyhound racing, and yet you look in the public record and there's countless instances of including Minister for Agriculture at one point talking about how increasing the betting tax or increasing the scope of betting tax, which was a big sort of political issue in the mid 2010s or so, was linked with increasing the contribution to the horse and greyhound racing fund. So I find that defence just I'm not sure, it's sort of making the whole discussion, trying to make it go away with a little bit of wordplay, which can be easily picked apart. And they have the power, they have the power to control this debate. But I feel I find it weird that people are saying, you need to be careful about going down this road. I don't think that's worked particularly well over a long period of time. No,
we'll talk about it again a little bit later on, because there's another, I think it's another public committee that's coming up very soon that we'll get a chance to watch on these streams over the next few days as well. The Newsround, of course, is brought to you by Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. Richie, plenty of football on the box tonight as well.
There is indeed, yeah. Manchester City can once again go top of the Premier League table tonight. They welcome West Ham to the Etihad. Knowing a win will see them move a point above Arsenal and still have a game in hand. One crucial change for City tonight: Ederson has dropped to the bench for the first time in the Premier League this season, so Stefan Ortega starts in goal for them. Kyle Walker captains the side in amongst a back four that also includes John Stones, Ruben Diaz and Nathan Ake. In midfield then you've got Rodri, Bernardo Silva and Riyad Mahrez. Julian Alvarez and Jack Grealish are in support of Erling Haaland. West Ham without Declan Rice tonight. Lucas Fabianski starts in goal. Back four: Vladimir Tsufal, Thilo Kerr, Angelo Ogbonna and Aaron Cresswell. Emerson's on the left-hand side of that defence. Flynn Downs, Lucas Paqueta and Pablo Fornals are in midfield. Jarrett Bowen supports Mikel Antonio up front. Tonight's other game is at Anfield, where Liverpool entertain Fulham. Alisson is in goal as always for Liverpool. Back four then of Trent Alexander-Arnold, Ibrahima Konate, Virgil van Dijk and Kostas Tsimikas. Midfield is Fabinho, Jordan Henderson, Curtis Jones, and a front three of Luis Diaz, Mo Salah and Darwin Nunez. For Fulham, it's Bernd Leno in goal. A couple of changes for them, one of which is at right back and sees Cedric Soares start at right full. Tosin Bayaro is in their defence along with Issa Diop and Anthony Robertson. Sasa Lukic comes into their midfield alongside Joao Palhinha. In front of them, Tom Kearney, former Liverpool man Harry Wilson and Carlos Vinicius Willian is their false nine tonight. Kick-off in both games is at 8 p.m.
Yeah, it's not a bad situation for City to be in, Dan. I know the headline obviously will be Ortega coming in to play in goal as opposed to Ederson, but again, they can play Mahrez now, not play him in the next game. They can kind of mix and match with the squad they have, which they're probably going to have to do a bit with these two games at Madrid coming up over the next few weeks too. Yeah,
and I think that was always the main thing around this title race. Like, where would they be at around the Madrid games in terms of but even maybe the mental load of the title race, and it feels like you get the points on the board tonight, you retain, like you're back top at that game in hand. It feels like they have that little bit of a cushion. I know Arsenal won last night, but I mean that's a Chelsea story as much as an Arsenal one. And it just feels like it's not that they were lucky, but I mean the fixtures around the Bayern game and the fact that they killed it really in the first leg, allowed them. And that's the thing with City at various times at the business end of seasons in recent years. It feels like they're okay. It feels like they have the ability to do that. And it feels like we're there again, and I know the flip side is maybe they've been so on point the last couple of weeks because they needed to get to that place, and now they probably have that little bit of a degree of comfort where you wonder there's an element of complacency maybe seep in because they have the sort of it's like the old 15-1 back in the day. They have a couple of lives here, with their points difference. They can let one go at some stage, and it's not the end of the world. Whereas it felt a couple of weeks back when Arsenal were flying, they needed to win everything. It's not the case anymore.
Yeah, good update, Richie, earlier from Seamus Coleman on Instagram about his knee injury.
Yeah, especially seeing as people feared the worst really on Monday night. Seamus Coleman could well be fit for the Republic of Ireland's Euro 2024 qualifiers next month. After all, the Everton captain says he avoided ACL damage, having been stretchered off in Monday's 2-2 draw with Leicester. It is hoped Coleman will be fit for Ireland's games with Greece and Gibraltar. No firm time frame on his return. He merely says he'll be back soon.
Yeah, we're talking about Seamus Coleman last night with Dominic King when we were talking about Everton, and that natural concern was there among Everton supporters. His contract was running down. They were hoping that it wasn't going to be a season ender, and maybe even his last game for the club in that case. I mean, this is very good news. There's no ligament damage, because that had to be the first fear when he was getting stretchered off.
Yeah, well, I suppose there's no ACL damage. We'll see if there's other ligament damage that can be problematic. I mean, I was trying to suss out today, with the Ireland stuff, and I feel like that would probably be guarded for a while, and also you need to even if positive updates are made, you just have to probably with this type of thing. I'm not an elite athlete, but I've had quite a few knee problems. You still have to monitor it over a period of time, and rehab can sometimes move slower than you might think. The timeline isn't weighted in his favour with the end of the season. I mean, I think Stephen Kenny has made the point consistently with Coleman. Sometimes he's been very hard on his body by playing through the pain barrier all the time, which is great. It speaks to his character, his selfless nature. But obviously, there's an element here of the stage of the career he's at. You're always wary of rushing it unnecessarily too. So I think there's a lot of factors to balance. But it's great. I mean, I was up in Derry at the time on Monday. You see the video like a lot of people do, and it's like, oh no, and as much as I wasn't mad on rushing to declaring that's that, because it's not always again straightforward with these issues. It looked like such a shocker. It was natural to probably lean into that method of thinking.
Big Sam is back at Leeds as we expected, Richie, and he's got Robbie Keane for company.
Yeah, all the best things start at Soccer Aid will. Sam Allardyce has been formally tasked with saving Leeds from relegation. The Premier League strugglers sacked Javi Gracia this morning, who lasted only 11 games in the top flight. They've lost 4 of the last 5, conceding 18 goals in that time frame, and are outside the drop zone on goal difference alone now. Allardyce's first game in charge will be away to Manchester City at the weekend, and he's to be assisted by former Oxford boss Carl Robinson and ex-Leeds striker Robbie Keane. Allardyce was asked how that particular partnership came to be.
Well, trying to shut him up in the first place is the first thing. Like, I mean, never stopped talking. But I mean, I've known Robbie for quite a while, and we've talked on many occasions about him, his getting into coaching, and about the fact that worked with him at Soccer Aid a few times and all that. So I really liked his personality, and obviously is in my mind to come in and give everybody a lift, not just by his coaching methods for the front men particularly, and the strikers, because obviously goals are very important, but also the fact that, you know, he's Leeds through and through, and he loves the place.
Networking. Soccer Aid was an unusual one.
I mean, it's the mad thing about Robbie, isn't it? That, like, I mean, this is the power of the profile of your career. I mean, it's like a Frank Lampard and various people who've benefited from this. It's not a slight on Robbie, but the company he moves in, like, he's on UEFA's 24-person football board.
Committee, yeah.
You know, and a couple of the Euros draw in Frankfurt last year. Now, you'd encounter Robbie there, and he's moving in all the right circles in the company, and naturally, that can lend itself to opportunities. Now, this is the whole nature of this Leeds thing is a gamble for everyone, but it's sort of a no strings gamble in a way. You know, that
is Robbie getting into these rooms because of his ability on the pitch?
Oh well, yeah. I mean, of course, that's the starting point. Yeah, I mean, sorry, and that's not to be negative about his ability, but if you look at the profile of, say, the 24 players on the UEFA board, like, you are looking at them as recognisable household names. You're not thinking, he wasn't a great player, he must be good around the boardroom table. But, like, again, you know, it's. I think he's probably someone who has been a good network worker, and particularly with UEFA. And I mean, it's a weird thing, you know. You see, like, you know, Robbie Keane, who's, I suppose, has come in for criticism in this country in recent times, but, like, he is, I mean, how many Irish players are sort of casually strolling along buying watches with Luis Figo or whatever they're doing in London, you know, or sort of moving in those circles, and that allows doors to open, but obviously, you know, his coaching career so far is incomplete. We don't know how good he is really, and that's, again, you know, we want to find out at some stage, and I suppose a lot of his ex-teammates are dipping their toe in the water at, you know, at various levels, and I suppose this is probably a free hit. I mean, I know Robbie's, like, Leeds through and through. I mean, they spent a year there, you know, but still, I think, you know, but yet in saying that, you did probably, I don't know, if you think of Robbie's career, I'm asking you, yes, you think of Spurs first and foremost.
Spurs through, don't you?
You think of Spurs, yeah. And what do you think of next? I sort of wondered,
Wolves,
do I think
Wolves,
do you think?
Yeah. Just a breakthrough, yeah.
Leeds would come in, because I don't know, because the Inter Milan thing, but then Leeds is sort of linked to that. I don't know, like, you can.
They were all fairly short. You kind of forget how short those little spells were. Like, the Coventry one was particularly short. Inter, for obvious reasons, was short. Leeds, before he went to Spurs, was short. Liverpool was short. So really, it's only Spurs that is really
LA
stuck.
Galaxy, sorry. LA Galaxy is probably.
That's fair.
You know, it's wrapped in with his identity in the last decade, you know, second half of his career. But again, like that I mean, that time in Leeds was so fraught. I don't know what the Leeds fan view of that is. Like, is he welcome back as a Leeds legend when he pops up at games in Ellen Road? Maybe he is.
Quite the situation, Richie, that Big Sam has landed himself in here too. If the reports are correct, and Adam Pope was with us on the BBC last night, and he was saying that the rumours on the ground in Yorkshire yesterday were £500,000 a week, a bonus of around £2 million if he keeps them in the Premier League. Given that Leeds currently sit outside the relegation zone, in theory he could lose all 4 games and still pocket around £4 million.
Man's an absolute genius. He's like, it's a strange one. He's on a, like, he's talked himself up hugely in his press conference today. There were other parts where he's compared himself to Guardiola and Klopp and Arteta and others in terms of his experience within the game, and he seemed to be a little bit feisty that he hasn't received a call until this point in the season, when I think most people presumed he was more or less retired. But if he does manage to keep them up, like, he's done a huge job in a short space of time, but there's a lot to do. But then if he does keep them up, the question is, do Leeds keep him on? Because they've just sacked their sporting director, so they're completely rudderless in how they're heading into the summer, bar Radriazzini and the owners there. So, like, it's such a baffling situation at Leeds that they could find themselves with a manager they don't really want, through sheer dint of the fact that he's kept them up. And it's not what a club like Leeds, with the squad profile and the age profile that they have in that squad, that they probably need at this point in time. But they just left it too late to sack Jesse Marsh, and this is the situation they found themselves in.
Yeah, I think the audio is ready there. Pete has got it, of Allardyce speaking earlier. These were some of the more Stephen Ireland style claims he made today.
I might be 68 and look old, but there's nobody ahead of me in football terms. Not Pep, not Klopp, not Arteta. So it's all there with me, and I share it with them. They do what they do. I do what I do. But in terms of knowledge and depth of knowledge, I'm up there with them. I'm not saying I'm better than them, but certainly as good as they are.
There you go, Dan. I'm not saying I'm better, but I'm saying I'm just as good.
He said Arteta's name like someone who found pasta on their menu at the Sunday roast. You know what I mean? It's like, Arteta? You know, no. It's just like, good God, yeah, you wish him well.
Yeah, I saw the BBC Sounds podcast, which I think was recorded a while ago as well, has kind of resurfaced today too, where basically Sam was like, you know, these new modern managers like Guardiola, they're not playing football the right way. A flick on and a volley into the goal is real beautiful football.
And I mean, a lot of people would agree with that point of view. You know, maybe close to home as well at certain times. So, I mean, yeah, like he's had so many success stories. I know West Brom wasn't terrific.
It's the one that's stolen that line that we always rabbited out as journalists, which was, man's never been relegated. Yeah,
it's a slight issue. But I suppose the nature of Leeds, I mean, they've been porous at times, and you know, you can see with Robbie, and is it Carl Robinson in as well, is it? I think is it the other member? Like,
Carl, yeah.
Yeah, like who would be a sort of a bit of a sort of a, from what I hear, players have worked under him, like sort of a lively dressing room presence. So they're going for a certain type of you know, swagger in a way, you know, and see if that can galvanise the team to get a response. And I mean, those, like, the money you talk about is crazy, but if it does keep them up by getting some points, I mean, the cost of relegation is such that it's probably worth it in that warped football world that we talk about all the time.
It's at the point where Leeds are also potentially trying to sell the club on currently, and there's so much more interesting to investors if they're still in the Premier League. That's where 4 million feels like a drop in the ocean if you manage to turn a profit over on the club. From an Irishman who played abroad getting a new role to another Irishman who played abroad getting a new role, Richie.
Yeah, Cork City have appointed Liam Buckley as their new sporting director. The former Sligo Rovers and St Pat's boss will help with player recruitment there and support the club's management on football-related matters.
Richie, tell us about a very sad story coming in about an Olympic gold medalist who's passed away at quite a young age.
Yeah, very shocking news today. Olympic gold medalist Tori Bowie has died at the age of just 32. The sprinter was found dead at her home in Florida, and a cause of death has not been released. Bowie was part of the US 4x100 metre team that won Olympic gold in 2016. Those Rio Games also saw her take silver in the 100 metres and bronze in the 200. Bowie won the individual gold in the 100 at the World Championships in London the following year in 2017. As I say, just 32 at her time of passing.
Watching some of the videos of the PSG fans this evening, Richie, outside the Parc des Princes, I've got a feeling Leo Messi might not even play for them again.
Yeah, he's widely reported to be leaving Paris Saint-Germain at the end of this season. The 35-year-old has apparently rejected a one-year extension on offer to him in Paris. His former club Barcelona and Saudi Arabian club Al Hilal have also been linked with a move for Messi this summer. He's been suspended for 2 weeks by PSG without pay. That's following an unauthorised trip to Saudi Arabia earlier this week that was part of his ambassadorial role in the Gulf state. Yeah.
We'll talk about this a bit more in the football show, possibly about how PSG have moved and who's winning maybe the battle for hearts and minds on this one. But he could potentially come back for the Auxerre game later this month, but he's banned from the club even for the 2 weeks, so he won't be training for the 2 weeks. Reports seem to be that he's already gone to Spain at this stage to go back to his home in Barcelona. It seems as if PSG are going to cut ties here.
You'd wonder, yeah. I watched one of the games recently, and the whole atmosphere around the game is so weird. Like, their fans are like intense. You know, you mightn't think of PSG in that way.
Because you think of them as being nouveau riche.
Yeah, but like, it's mad, and even just different political views within the support and stuff. It's actually a mad club, and sometimes, like, I watched one of these games where there's this massive noise going on in the background, but like there was almost nothing happening on the pitch with all these great players, and like it's weird. It's like sort of an NBA game with these sort of the Globetrotters or something, the Harlem Globetrotters, or with a sort of an ultras atmosphere that is completely out of sync with their approach to the game. You know what I mean? It's really weird.
Richie, before we go, Josh van der Flier potentially could defend his European Player of the Year award here.
Yeah, 3 Leinster players making the shortlist for the EPCR Player of the Year award. Van der Flier is one. He could become the first player to win it back-to-back with the back row once again nominated. Joining him on the 5-man shortlist are his Leinster teammates Caelan Doris and Gary Ringrose. Also making the cut is La Rochelle number 8 Gregory Aldreet, and rounding out that list is Toulouse scrum half Antoine Dupont. The winner of the Anthony Foley Memorial Trophy will be announced after this month's Heineken Champions Cup final, with voting open to the public via the EPCR website. And staying with the award theme, the shortlist for TikTok Women's Six Nations Player of the Championship also revealed today. England's Grand Slam winning captain Marley Packer gets the nod, as does her teammate Holly Aitchison. After scoring 5 tries in the tournament, France centre Gabrielle Vernier also makes the cut, and completing the shortlist is Wales' 19-year-old prop Cecilia Tuipulotu.
Yeah, I think if Josh van der Flier wins it this time around, he'll hope it's different to Marseille, where he was on a losing side and having to pick up the award while the trophy was being lifted by the opposition team. If you want to get plenty more rugby podcast goodness, the Rugby Daily, voiced by our own Richie McCormack, is open and available right now. Richie, I'll give you a plug. You give us 20 minutes of news, I'll give you a free plug.
You're a good man. You're better than Joe in that front, actually, so thank you, Will.
Oof. Richie, thanks a million for now. Dan is staying with us. We'll have Wednesday Night Rugby coming up in a few moments' time.